Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, home of all things stock, investment, and personal finance related. Now for today's video, we're going to be welcoming back Anthony Power. He's a household name in terms of the Bitcoin mining analyst community. And in today's presentation, we're going to be talking about some big developments from Cipher and HIVE. And in addition to that, we're going to be talking about year-to-date share price performance of all of the publicly traded miners and where we're continuing to see value in this sector. Now, before we get into all that, please take a second, hit the like button, you guys. It's a big help to myself and the channel. It also helps get this content to other people who may find value. If you're not already part of the community, McNallie Money, feel free to join. And let me know in the comments section below what you thought about today's discussion, which of the miners you're holding and why, and your top pick moving into 2024. In addition to that, we're going to be doing some giveaways going into the holiday season. So we've got swag from the mining companies and McNallie Money swag to hand out. Now with that being said, let's get into today's video. Okay guys, so that's right. Today's video, we're welcoming back Anthony Power. Now last week we put out a video covering November production results. Today we're going to be covering some more recent developments over the last few days, including a big announcement out of Cipher, a big announcement out of Hut 8 Mining Corp, and the phenomenon we're seeing about increased transaction fees on top of the block reward. So we've got a lot to talk about today, and to kick it off, we're going to throw it over to Anthony to give us an update on the Cipher news.
Hi, Bryce. Well, yeah, we got an update from Cipher this morning, and nearly $100 million worth of purchases there. They've bought the T21 Ant miner, the latest model on the market, and this is a model that some of the other miners have already gone out there and purchased. They managed to achieve the same pricing for that model, so $14 a terahash. That's a very, very good rate, significantly lower than what miners were paying in 2022 and 2021. The other great part about it is efficiency. What this will do is it will bring down the efficiency of the company. So at the moment, Cipher have got 7.2 exahash. This initial order is for a further 7.1 exahash. So this will literally double their hash rate during 2024. This doesn't stop there though. They've got an option to purchase a further 8.7 exahash on the similar terms that they're paying at the moment, and that will take them to over the magic 20 exahash, so total of 24.2 exahash. So that takes them into that sort of Marathon Digital, Riot platforms, CleanSpark. We know Bitfarms is getting closer to 20 with their plan at the moment, and they could be over 21 exahash if they do everything they say they propose to do. So you're getting these mid-tier miners sort of now, as the halving approaches, moving into that top tier effectively. From an efficiency perspective, which is really important, we've stressed this on a number of videos, going into the halving, because the lower the efficiency, the lower of cost of mining. So at the moment, Cipher have an efficiency of around about 31.2 joules per terahash. With these expansions going in place, that could improve their efficiency down to 22.6, and that's sort of like, you know, that's at the top end of the scale in comparison to peer groups as well. So great update by Cipher. I don't think this will be the last update we see from a miner. I mean, I think just over a week ago, we had even one of the smaller miners, DMGI blockchain. They announced a 1 exahash purchase of the T21s as well for delivery in early 2024. Now, DMGI are a small miner compared to some of the others that we spoke about, but this is, for them, it's doubling their hash rate. So at the moment, just over literally 1.1 exahash. This takes it closer to 2.2 exahash. So we'll see their machines coming out very, very soon. They put the deposit down already, and the balance will be paid on the machines arriving. So good update from DMGI this month, good update from Cipher today. But you'll talk about the next update from Hut 8, I believe.
Of course, yeah, it's really interesting. We're seeing a lineup with the Bitcoin mining purchases, especially these T21s, which allow them to overclock or go into kind of a high efficiency mode. So we talked a lot about that with Bitfarms in the interview with Jeff. We also had Sue Ennis and Asher on from the new Hut 8 Corporation recently to talk about the merger. And now we've seen another big development out of Hut 8. So what actually came out this morning was a big related to the managed service component. So I actually read an interesting article. I'll go off on a tangent a bit over the weekend talking about Hut 8's business model and comparing it to MicroStrategy, how they're really branching out of the traditional pure play miner realm like we're seeing with some of the other competitors and getting into a more diversified business, really building the business around their HODL strategy, similar to what we've seen with MicroStrategy. So that's definitely one to watch. I know Hut 8 had a very strong week in terms of share performance last week. We're going to talk about year-to-date share performance at the end of the video. Anthony's put together a great table, but Hut 8 is definitely one to keep an eye on, and that's on the backs of this morning's announcement. So they actually came out, their managed service team is going to build out infrastructure for approximately 66,000 units. This is in relation to the Celsius bankruptcy deal, and this is going to be at a 215 megawatt site in Texas. So again, we're seeing a lot of activity in the state of Texas, and I know a lot of people specifically focused on this Celsius bankruptcy dealing are going to pay a lot of attention to this. So Anthony, that's kind of the news. What's your take on that?
I think, you know, from where we saw Hut 8 before the merger, you know, they had a fantastic HODL. You know, only Marathon had a larger HODL from the miners. But their operating facilities at Drumheller and the issue they had with their energy provider was putting them into a really challenging position. They need to locate to different sites. The merger obviously took a long time, and we got to know towards the end of the deal that was going to happen. But you know, that merger looks to be, you know, a fit of two parts there that both bring different skill sets to the table. You know, Hut have got the enormous balance of Bitcoin, which can, you know, be used in a multitude of ways to grow the company. US BTC have got, you know, enormous sites in the US and also access to energy in the US. So, you know, significant managed facilities. So that gives, you know, a good balance. Hut 8, again, we've mentioned the HPC. They're going to take that further. So they have their 5 HPC centers, but they've also got all their GPUs that we're previously using for the Ethereum mining, which are going to be used again in the HPC space to develop servers for AI activity. So, you know, having that real diversified lines of business puts them in a good position. It'll be interesting to see when we get their sort of like first quarterly update what that looks like, because I think at the moment, you know, investors out there are looking to see, you know, what that means in terms of revenues, what that means in terms of margins. You know, we've talked the talk now on the channel. I know that, you know, the updates have come out, but I think the retail investors want, you know, more updates with a better understanding, you know, of how the merger, you know, looks from a sort of like balance sheet perspective. Now we know Hut had a very strong balance sheet on their own. You know, what does it look like as one company now? What do the revenues and the margins look like from one company? So it's going to be very interesting early 2024 when we start seeing that data come through. But yeah, I think it's a positive move at the moment. As we get through to the halving, these companies that have looked to diversify into the sort of like HPC space are going to be getting revenues that aren't linked to Bitcoin, and that's going to be really important, because, you know, we don't know what the Bitcoin price is tomorrow, never mind what it's going to be in April next year. So I think, you know, more and more, if it was one miner doing it, you know, you might say, you know, it might be a challenge, but there's so many miners going down this route. We've had Iris, we've had Bit Digital, we've had Hive Digital, you know, now, you know, Hut 8, we're at the forefront of that, making these decisions. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting times. Look forward to seeing what happens early 2024 when we get further updates from Sue and the rest of the team at Hut 8 Corp.
Yeah, it's really incredible to see the industry evolve, and Hut 8 was actually one that I first got exposure to Bitcoin mining through. They have facilities in Alberta here in Canada. It was kind of my entry point into Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining, so it holds a near and dear place to my heart, and I've really enjoyed watching this business expand. Like you said, they took a lot of criticism for the amount of time and the transparency around the deal, but it does seem that it's shaking out pretty nicely, and I know a lot of people in the comment section are viewing Hut 8 as kind of the opportunity buy right now within the mining community as we start to look at position sizing and moving money between companies and things like that. So that's definitely one to keep an eye on. We'll continue to update you guys. The other one we wanted to talk about, and it's really interesting again, we've seen so much focus going into the halving around efficiency and fleet upgrades. And the general thinking from the investment community and the retail community was, hey, come halving, these guys' costs or energy costs are going to double, and their revenue is essentially going to be cut in half as the block rewards cut in half, assuming everything stays the same and Bitcoin price and all the rest. But now this phenomenon we're seeing is the fees, the transaction fees are piling up on top of the block reward, in some instances almost doubling the block reward and really making that worry around halving a lot less concerning. And that's actually, I think, causing a lot of people to reprice this sector. I texted Anthony this morning first thing and I said, how are the miners up this morning? Bitcoin was down over the weekend. I thought for sure it would be a red open. And we got to talking about these transaction fees. So Anthony, I'm curious to get your take on this, because this really is something I don't think a lot of people anticipated, or at least anticipated to this extent.
So, basically we understand that, every 10 minutes a new block is mined, and the rewards for that block are the 6.25 Bitcoin, plus usually generally a small amount of transaction fees that for the transactions that I put onto that particular block. We saw in May this year the rise of ordinals, and that created a buzz in the space and significant amounts of transaction fees. And that first sort of like 2 weeks of May, very, very profitable for miners to mine Bitcoin, because at that point in time, again, miners were not just getting 6.25, they were getting probably closer to 10, 11 Bitcoin per block. So, nearly a doubling of the amount of rewards that they were normally expected to receive. We saw the same start again in November, and in early December, we're seeing the same again with the amount of fees now. So I just looked at the last few days, and accessing some of the wallets, and Marathon Digital being the largest miner, always good to keep a firm eye on that wallet, because they're sort of like leading the way at the moment in terms of mining production by total. And one particular day, they mined 125 Bitcoin in one day, which is like just a phenomenal target. I mean, that's higher than some of the miners are doing in a month at the moment. So, but when you go down and look at the number of blocks, you then start seeing some of the blocks they receive 13 Bitcoin for. So, that's more than double a typical reward of 6.25, and it happened on a few occasions in the last few days. And generally, we've seen probably the same sort of increase that we saw in November. We saw about over a 20% increase in fees during the month of November, which helped the miners at the end of the month. And even though the difficulty impacted the amount of Bitcoin miners were able to mine, the extra increase in fees offset that. So production for miners was actually better with a reduced amount of effectively blocks mined for each miner, because the fees were very good. And we're seeing the same in December, and there doesn't seem to be a respite at the moment. It's been going, since we've gone a bit longer. So, if this is a sign of things to come, where miners will start getting rewards, like you alluded to at the start of the question, it takes some of the pressure off miners going into the halving. We're seeing all these miners now buy the most efficient machines, get that efficiency rate down, get the cost of mining down, because come that halving in April, overnight the mining costs from an energy perspective double overnight. And if you've got more efficient machines, that means you're doubling a lower figure. So it's all benefits to the most efficient miners, and the most efficient miners who have access to the lowest cost of energy are the ones that win the battle in this race. And so it's an interesting space to be in. I'm looking forward to the December output, because, as I say, we're already, the 18th now. We've had a good run of transaction fees. Will they continue for the rest of the month? And we might see some, certainly some new monthly records broken by some of the miners. I think, Marathon and CleanSpark will probably break their monthly record this month. And some of the other miners that have been, not necessarily at the top of the tables each month, may start to show better performances in December than they've done previously. And it'd be good to sort of like, when I put my year review together of how the miners performed, that would be an interesting table just to show where we've come in the last few months, because there has been some improvement in some of these other miners that weren't necessarily doing well at the start of the year. But yeah, a good month so far from transaction fees point of view.
No kidding. Christmas coming early for a lot of the miners. And so transaction fees are obviously very impactful going into halving. The other thing that's very impactful is Bitcoin price. And we seem to have both working in unison. We've also got the spot ETF approval. I saw January 9th now, the expected date for that. So I really do feel it's gone from the perfect storm for Bitcoin back in the FTX days to the perfect, I guess, sunny day, we'll call it, for Bitcoin now. And it seems like everything's kind of coming together. So with that being said, Anthony's put together a really comprehensive chart here showing share price appreciation of the publicly traded miners, or a good portion of them, year to date. So almost all of 2023, and highlighting the share or the price appreciation in Bitcoin. So what you're going to notice here, you guys, is for the vast majority of miners, they've outpaced Bitcoin substantially. And that's why I said we're starting to look for opportunities to reposition, move money around in our portfolios. Personally, Anthony and I talk about that quite a bit. But Anthony, I wanted to get your take on the share price performance and where maybe you still see some value.
So, you know, we've talked about, you know, Core Scientific from a share price increase in 2023 have achieved the highest so far. I mean, we're talking 840%, but we have to reiterate that the Core Scientific share price had dropped effectively nearly 99% when they announced they were going into Chapter 11. So when a company announces it's going through a bankruptcy process, that's going to have a serious impact on the share price. And that share price had dropped to around about 4 cents per share. It's currently today trading, last time I looked was about 80 cents a share. So for those people that, you know, would have jumped on that share at 4 cents, taking a real risk there, because nobody knows if they were ever going to get out of Chapter 11. All the positioning sort of looked like they had too much debt to try and sort out a range. But for those people that did, they'd be sitting on some really nice profits now. When we're looking at the other miners that have done really well this year, the two miners that have been talked about consistently throughout the year, Bitfarms and CleanSpark. I know that when I asked a number of the analysts that are on X as well as I do with their analysis, which of the miners that they were interested in, Bitfarms was the only miner that was listing all 5 analysts' positions, actually. So, you know, there's obviously some sort of like correlation there, like, the proof's in the pudding there. You know, we come out there and we do this data. Bitfarms, 575%. I mean, that's a real turnaround company. I mean, 2022 was a disaster year for them in terms of the fact they were at 160 million in debt. They were doing everything to get rid of that debt, selling machines, selling Bitcoin, everything to get the debt down. You now see a company with less than 7 million debt on the balance sheet. They've just done a massive order for the latest mining machines that will come in next financial year, and everything starts looking rosy. And we've seen their share price literally even in the last couple of weeks has gone up, I think, like 150%. So significant rises. CleanSpark, if you look at a mine that's the only miner to achieve its growth strategy in 2022 in terms of what it said it would achieve and what it actually achieved from a hash rate perspective. In 2023, they did set an ambitious target of 20 exahash at the start of the year, but they revised that down to 16. And they'll get to 16 exahash sort of in that first quarter of 2024. I think February they're announcing now. We get the regular updates from the Sandouville site saying, how far they're coming on, getting that facility ready for the new miners going in there. So they've had a great year. Another order on top of their previous orders will take them over 20 exahash. So we fully expect that to occur again in 2024. And then you have sort of like, the big miners that, the Marathon Digital and the Riot platforms, those miners that, had, market valuations of 7 or 8 billion back in 2021 when we saw the last Bitcoin bull cycle. They're starting to gain momentum now, and Marathon have broken through the 4 billion market cap last week. So they've now sort of overtaken Riot platforms as not only the largest miner from a exahash perspective on the public listed, but now the largest by a market capitalization as well. And when you look at the amount of hash rate that they've got, rightly so, However, with all these miner prices increasing, we'll cover this in another video. It will look at how we sort of like start to value some of these companies. So stay tuned for a video coming up. We'll cover that in more detail. But as you rightly indicated, nearly all the miners are actually competing with the Bitcoin price. The only sort of like three that aren't is HUT have gone through a merger, and I think from a shareholder's point of view, it's about information and sort of like it wasn't all through HUT's issue. It was delayed. I mean, the SEC just kept asking question after question to make sure that they felt comfortable with the merger. So when it finally happened, we've seen a sort of a bump in the share price now, and I'm sure in 2024, when people realise what services they've got out there, revenue driving services, and what their market capital at the moment is, it might be food for thought for people to start looking at a little bit more closely than they're doing at the moment. Argo blockchain, well, we know Argo, we're sort of in the same bracket as Core Scientific, but they didn't go into Chapter 11. They nearly went to Chapter 11. They nearly announced they're going to Chapter 11. But they haven't gone into Chapter 11, and they've managed to keep their heads above water. This month is going to be a blessing, like the last month. I mean, in November, their mining revenue was like a million more than expected. That could happen again in December. And, even these small, well, $1 million is not a small amount, but even this gives them a little bit, more time to sort of like manage their payments on the debt repayment there, and gives them some more months of a runway. And, who knows, if the transaction fees stay at the level they are, and, we can get to the halving, some of these miners might last longer than some of the people out there are thinking at the moment, because there's a lot of talk about M&A activity. We had the same talk in 2021, and there wasn't a great deal of M&A activity. I mean, that's a merger of equals. That's not an acquisition. That's two companies joining together at the same level. An M&A activity would be like a Marathon Digital buying one of these miners and then sort of like having that under its arm as a subsidiary sort of thing. That's what people are expecting. But all the things we've talked about today point to giving some of these miners more runtime, especially as we approach the halving and go through the halving. And the Bitcoin price up 155% at the moment, still down significantly on its 2021 high. So we've still got a way to go. And let's see how we progress over the next few months.
Yeah, super good discussion today. We're going to talk about valuations in a subsequent video, you guys, probably within the next few days. We also wanted to talk a little bit about trade strategy, what Anthony and I are doing personally, how we're managing our portfolios, option strategy, entry exit points, stuff like that. So there's a lot more to come. Let us know in the comment section below if there's anything specific you want us to discuss. If you're still watching at this point, hopefully you found some value. So make sure you hit the like button, you guys. It helps get it out to other like-minded individuals who might find value. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, McNallie Money, feel free to join, and make sure you follow us on Twitter or X. We'll leave Anthony's information linked above. That's all for today. Have a great rest of your afternoon and enjoy the price action.